some takes haven't represented themselves so well. And that's, I think we're going to start off. It's time. Look, it's not just about glory. And as we said early in this season, it's not just about taking victory laps. Sometimes you have to take a little humble pie. You have to eat a little crow. And we do all have preseason takes that we wish we could have back. I threw this one out to the socials, out to our viewers, this is the people's show. This is a show for the NFL fans out there, not just in Australia and New Zealand, but anywhere you're catching this one. And I asked, what was your worst preseason takeaway or take, and how has it aged poorly? I know I've got a few that I'm going to get to. But running around the grounds, Brad wanted to let us know that he thought that Newton being released by the New England Patriots was a bad idea. He thinks that's aged pretty poorly. Tyler Boyd would finish the year as a top 20 wide receiver. That was from Blake Henderson. I think there's a few others in front of him in the queue there in Cincinnati. We got Josh Y. Arizona aren't going to make the playoffs. That was his take in preseason. That's at 6-0, and with the Houston Texans up next, that's not looking like it's going
7-0.
Yeah, we're not exactly looking at a nice 1975 Château Latouf aging nicely in the wine cellar with that one, and I completely made that wine up. And trash take from Matty Haas, Zach Wilson being good right out of the gate. A little situational toughness there for Zach Wilson, but it has not been smooth sailing. But we're not just going to shame other people. Time to put some shame on our names. And all right, for me off the back, it's defenses I got wrong, Phil. It's defenses I got wrong. And I thought Washington, the football team, and the Denver Broncos would have locked in, no doubt about it, top 3, top 4, top 5 defensive units. For Denver, it's kind of a sum of its parts situation there. You see the individual talent, like Patrick Surtain II looks fantastic. And you look at Von Miller's return to health, looks nothing short of an all-pro and a guy that has the on-field talent and display to challenge for Defensive Player of the Year again. But it's not the sum of its parts. This is not a lockdown defense, whether that is the fact that they can't play consistent complementary football with an offense that is staying on as schedule and on time as we might have expected. Again, injuries throughout the offense play a part there. Whether it's lapses and just momentary miscommunications, they are getting beat for deep plays despite the talent in the secondary at cornerback and at safety. It's just not, it's not a defense that's fallen, through the bottom or anything. They're still around the top 10, top 15 when you look at things like DVOA, but this is not a game-breaking or game-defining and a franchise, a culture-setting defense that I thought we were going to get from your guys in Mile High. As for Washington, though, they are one of the worst defenses in the league. I thought with the addition of guys like William Jackson in the secondary, where the clear weakness was for Washington, with Jamin Davis getting drafted in the first round to help boost what they had at the second level of the defense. Again, linebacker wasn't as strong a spot as what they had on the defensive line. And then the lack of cohesion and group rushing from 4 first-round talents up there on the line of scrimmage. Chase Young has not taken the step we'd like to have seen. We're not getting, Montez Sweat is not delivering the promise that his physical skill set threatens. So I think all in all, Denver, a bad take. Washington, a terrible take. My worst preseason take that they were going to be one of the most dominant defenses in the league, because right now they're a defense when your team, whether it's your fantasy team or your home team that you root for, or you're just having a little flutter on the weekend, they're a defense that you circle in red and say, this is one to target week in, week out.
Well, Laz, we could just look at our propaganda picks for the last 2 weeks as our worst takes. We've yielded half a unit on 7 wagers. Not great. Wiped out all of our early season winnings and then some. But if we're talking worst takes, and you better believe you and I are going to gloat at season's end if the ones that we had favored and have tipped do pan out. And we do have a couple that are looking pretty good, but we're not talking about those. You picked. We had a tip in the preseason. Who do you tip of you and I to lead the league in rushing? Who do we each respectively select? I said right away, you're going to be tempted to go with Derrick Henry. Don't. Only Earl Campbell and Emmitt Smith have ever led the league 3 consecutive years in rushing in the last 70 years since Jim Brown, 60 years ago. And the Titans last season, Ryan Tannehill was showing a lot of potential in yards per attempt. They add A.J. Brown. I thought it was going to be a more balanced attack. Well, here we are, a third of the way through the season, and Derrick Henry's 117 yards up on the field, and the field is Nick Chubb, who's now headed to the sideline for a few weeks. I'm not yet ready to yield the whole Derrick Henry was the right pick, because there are durability concerns. We've seen 8 players ever get 125 carries in 4 straight weeks. Nobody since Eddie George in the year 2000. Yep, he has more rushing yards over his last 40 games than anybody over any 40 game span ever, period, full stop. That is damn impressive. They can't continue to run him at that clip. They're going to have to balance it out, or wear and tear will hit. But the player I tipped to overtake Henry is why this is my worst take. I went with Dalvin Cook, and you warned me. Teams with a losing record tend not to do well in this category. It's been 11 years since somebody had done it. And I said, I can see the Vikings getting to 9-8. I was lying to myself. Dalvin Cook's 31st in the league in rushing. Unless, 30 guys in front of him aren't going down. So that was my worst take. And I'm just going to go ahead and take the L on that one.
Well, look, okay. We've eaten our humble pie.
Yeah.
The charcuterie board of Crow has been served. It hasn't been enjoyed, but sometimes you have to cop what you lay down. When you
I have a delivery coming to the hotel here in about 25 minutes for a place called Man versus Fries. So that's gonna I don't know what to expect. They put French fries in literally everything: burritos, pizza, hamburgers. It is very Nashville. So whatever palate cleansing needs to happen from the Crow, I will do so with a smile in about a half hour's time.
A take cleanser just in time for Monday Night Football, Tuesday, 11:15 Australia. It was East Coast
on
time.
ESPN.
On ESPN. But those are takes that have perhaps put a little heat on us. But there's also heat on chairs and heat on seats. So let's get to who has the hottest seat through 6 weeks, just about 6 weeks of the NFL season. The third waypoint, the Dirty 30. Who has the hottest seat from the NFL coaching staff at the moment, Phil? There's several candidates that jump out. We're going to try and not cross over here. We'll see if we're lockstep with some of these picks, but let's go hottest seat to start off. Who gets that nod for you? Who should be looking over their shoulder and making sure the savings account is looking relatively solid?
Laws, for me, it's not looking at wins and losses, because if I told you to tell me how many wins the Chicago Bears had, I don't think you'd be able to tell me they have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cleveland Browns and other teams that we expect to be in the playoff hunt. The Bears are 3-3 when they have a win over the Raiders that was, ugly, but it was comprehensive. That game was never in doubt. But Matt Nagy entered the season on the hot seat. And to me, I'm more reading between the lines there. His adamant nature in which Andy Dalton was remaining the starting quarterback, it's not going to be Justin Fields. And then out of nowhere, after a random practice, he decides, yep, Fields is our guy. That to me suggests somebody in ownership had a conversation. And that kind of lack of trust, I'm reading between the lines here, leads me to believe that it is Matt Nagy. And looking at how the Bears rest of the season projects, the fact that the Vikings just proved to be a very tough out. I mean, it seems like every one of their games is decided on a last-second field goal. I mean, heck, a 34-yard miss from Greg Joseph is the only reason that the Cardinals remain undefeated. But then the Lions are, a 50-yarder from being no longer winless because of the Vikings. They're just a hard team to project. But I don't think the Bears at season's end are going to be the 9-8 it would take to save Nagy's job. I think they're going to be closer to the 6-11. So I think he's on the hottest of hot seats. But a couple names I'm watching: Vic Fangio, that team just seems lost. They're coming out of the gates just down, and it takes them 2 quarters to get into rhythm. They look great in the second half. So I don't know if it's in-game adjustments for him or just the team's warming up the wrong way. But I think Vic Fangio is a name to watch. If Denver goes on a cold streak here and they got the Browns on a short week coming up, that might get ugly, even though the Browns are a little shorthanded. And also a name that surprises me because he could have won Coach of the Year last year, Brian Flores. But the Dolphins are 1-5. They've lost 5 in a row. And if not for Xavier Howard heroic play in game 1 against the Patriots, the Dolphins are winless. And they just lost to the Jags in London with Tua back. So they are completely out of sorts. They're not a team that is intimidating at all. They seem to lack talent. They seem to lack scheme. But what concerns me for Flores' future is that they're lacking toughness. And it wouldn't surprise me if this trend continues, if we see wholesale changes in Miami. So I'll put 3 little JavaScript emoji seat warmers under Matt Nagy just because of where he was coming into the season, what we've seen in the interim, but maybe 1 little JavaScript seat warmer under the backsides of Brian Flores and Vic Fangio.
Yeah, Flores is an interesting one. You just see on the offensive side of things, you said, is a scheme problem. They don't seem to be the most expansive, creative offense. The offensive line, despite what some Dolphins fans were trying to say last year, it is not improved. It is not good. And I don't know how you fix that at this point in the season. You're not exactly about to go trade away future assets. You've already done some of that to update.
Their first round pick belongs to Philadelphia.
and it's looking really good. That pick is
Really good for
aging.
Philly.
We talk about some takes that didn't age well. That pick is aging beautifully by the day. It's an asset that the Eagles are going to be very glad that they've got in their portfolio. So the Flores one is tough because he's very well respected, as a lot of these coaches are. But it's just not trending in the right direction down there. And this is a team that it seemed like the defense was further ahead of where the offense was. But defense, it's hard to maintain consistent quality performances. And they've had some of those earlier in the year when the other side of the ball is not delivering. It's just hard to keep that energy up. Defense, so much of defense is team, it's team rallying, it's communication, it's confidence. And it's hard to maintain that at any sort of consistent level when the other side of the ball is just, and this wasn't their worst performance. They're up against the Jags defense, might have helped, but they're just giving the ball back so often, so frequently. Exactly. There were good performances if you break it down individually against the Bills, there were moments there where Miami's defense did a good job against a very talented offense. Yeah. But when you're just getting the ball back after 3 punts, 3 and outs, it just sending the ball back down for people like Josh Allen to have another go, people like Trevor Lawrence to have another go. Eventually that wears on you as a unit. And that's unfortunately the direction it's heading there. I had some similar names that came to mind. Vic Fangio, certainly one that's heating up. If you're looking at this as like a graph, a line graph, his heat chart, his line is going up quicker than anybody else's from
thermometer,
where it was.
Maybe?
Thermometer, that one. Yep, sure. Yeah. I only measure the temperature of a bath for a toddler every single evening. Sure, I could have conjured the word thermometer out of my brain. I'm going to go with Joe Judge from the New York Giants. This team is 1-5. Joe Judge, through the these first couple of years of the Joe Judge experience, there's been weird anecdotes. We know the players that were retiring in camp, the certainly old school type of mentality and drills and punishments that were going on at camp and training. But he was generally felt like the Maras, the ownership there, the brass there, was a big fan. They were big fans of Joe Judge. They were very happy to have him in the building. But 1-5 start. Daniel Jones, after some promising early performances, does not have his finest showing here. The Jason Garrett-led offense has occasional. Jason Garrett will always know how to move the ball up the field. He's a proponent of matriculation, getting to third and manageable, converting. But this has not been an offense that's taken the next step. That is something that you really feel challenged by. Injuries, part of that as well. But ultimately, it's not performing there. And the defense has taken a huge step back. I just need to paint a picture here, though, right? 1-5, and we know that the ownership is generally the mood is generally pretty solid. In our experience of Joe Judge in New York, they have the Panthers at home next week. All right, Panthers are not a great team; they're a frisky team. If they lose, think about the market to Sam Darnold in New York. Yeah. In New York, you can imagine what the headlines are going to be. And this is going to be I believe this will be a close game because I think there's a lot of comparables there. Then they go on the road to the Chiefs. Then they play the
Monday
Raiders.
Night Football. Also, I'll be there. I'll be front row seat for that one.
Yeah, they have a Raiders team that, at least for 1 week, was galvanized after the absolute tumult and disgrace that the franchise had been thrown in with John Gruden's exit. And the week after that, they have the bye, and then they come out of the bye against a familiar friend, Tom Brady. There's a serious chance that this team is 1-9, 2-8. Yeah. There's a bye week in there before the Bucs game. They have, as much as I have my thoughts about the quality of coach that Jason Garrett is in 2021's edition of the NFL, the Maras really like Jason Garrett, and they know that he's a caretaker head coach in waiting if they need to make a move. I think the seat could get hot for Joe Judge very quickly in that market, considering some of the matchups, particularly if it starts with a next week loss to a team led by Sam Darnold and a return to New York in that building. This could get very ugly very quickly in a market and a media scope that has no qualms with pulling out the fangs when things are on shaky ground.